Hey guys, Stealther. I'm looking at the M60 in Armored Warfare today. This is the Tier 3 main battle tank, which is going to start off the US battle tank line. Let's see, I'm going to select the Wolfley tree, and over here you can see the American MBT line. It starts with the M60, that's what I'm looking at now, and all the way down the line is going to lead to the M1A2 SEP V2. But before we get there, we're going to have to go through quite a few Abrams as well as an Abrams prototype, the XM1. And before you get there, you're going to be playing quite a few versions of the M60, including the M60 Starship. Now, the M60 at Tier 3, it looks just like a standard, pretty much an M48 pattern type. Maybe the one that you are familiar with from the previous tank that you unlocked. But the M60 is quite a bit different. If you compare the two, you're going to see quite some differences in the sense of armor, seeing as the M48 only had 124mm of armor, and that is going up to 143. The turret is a slightly bit less armored though. You're looking at 200mm on the Patton, and the M60 only has 177. However, the sides of the turret are more heavily armored, and the tank does have some other things going for it, which of course goes in the way of the gun. The Patton 48 does only 124 damage, and that is more than doubled once you switch over to the M60 and start firing heat rounds. Now to look at the MBT-60 in detail, I have it fully unlocked, and fully unlocking this tank and getting the Starship is not really that difficult. The grind isn't that long because getting to the Starship takes you, I believe, somewhere along the line of 20,000 XP, if that much. Anyway, you start it with a stock Patton armor. The tank itself does not have any armor upgrades, but you do get an armor retrofit slot, which is always useful in case you're driving a main battle tank. As far as ammunition goes, you got AP FSDS that you can upgrade, and you have the ability to unlock heat rounds. Now heat rounds are of course pretty much the preferred way of firing shells at the enemy at this tier, because there are really no vehicles in this tier that have any good defense against heat rounds. So getting these heat rounds quickly is a priority, and making sure that you have them will allow you to do more and more and more damage. Now the rest of the upgrades aren't really that special. You have an upgraded engine, which is going to give you a bit of acceleration buff, but only by less than a second. And you can see that even with the upgraded engine, this thing is really slow to get going. And that's one of my main issues with the M60. It just takes a while to get this thing accelerated and to get it moving. So that is something that we'll have to look at in the gameplay to show you exactly why and how this is. As far as the tech slots go, you have a rangefinder or a gunner periscope. They don't stack, so you have to pick one. Minimum accuracy means you can zoom in farther, and the gunner periscope means you have a less maximum accuracy, which means that the maximum reticule circle can't go as large as it normally can. It's going to decrease by 12%. And there is still a lot of discussion about it, but this is the way that I understand the terms that they have used for this vehicle. Now you can see that I haven't upgraded the high explosive plastic shells yet, because I simply never use those. But if you find yourself using or find yourself going up against heavily armored tanks that you may not be able to penetrate with either AP with an armor penetration round of 225mm, or a heat round which only goes through 184, then you can fire HE, but I just never use it. You can also unlock a retrofit, which is the reinforced ammo rack. I don't think I've been ever ammo racked in a tank. Maybe it's just because I'm lucky, maybe it's just because it isn't that likely to happen. But either way, if you get this thing, it will also give you almost 5% more hit points, which of course is nice if you're driving an MBT. Other than that, you can get 2 cash in credit or cash injections of 10,120 credits each, and with that you can save, or you can get a bit of money in order to make your way to the Starship a bit easier. Now the rest of the details of this tank, it is not particularly fast as mentioned. The acceleration is quite terrible, going over 9 seconds to get to 30 kph, and the maximum speed is only 48. So especially once you compare this unit to, for example, the Leopard, you're going to see that the Leopard can pretty much run circles around the M60. On the other hand, the M60 is much more heavily armored. The Leopard has 70 millimeters of armor and this one has twice that. And considering the sloping, it is pretty hard to penetrate an M60 from the front using some of the other guns that you can find at Tier 3. You can see that the Leopard has a significant amount of speed, or compared to the M60 it's significantly faster, and it takes a little less time to accelerate. As far as vision, well, you're driving an MBT, you're not a scout, so vision really isn't that important. 360 meter range is okay, it's nothing stellar, so try to find a scout that will stick with you, and you should have a spotter so that your shells can land beyond that 360 meter range. Gun depression on this tank is 9 degrees, which is quite good, and with that you can do a bit of hold down sniping. Although the turret on this tank isn't that heavily armored, but 177 is usually enough to make it difficult for the enemy to go through your armor. Other stats, reload takes 7.5 seconds, your accuracy is 0.14, which is pretty good, and your targeting time is 327, which is on the high end, in the sense that it takes quite long before your tank fully zooms in. Now, the retrofits that I'm going with on this tank are to benefit all the positive aspects of the tank. So I'm getting experimental propellant, which will allow me to do 5% more damage, and I have the internal hull reinforcements, which gives me 7.5% more armor. Now I have the Mark II unlocked, I just haven't installed it yet on this tank, because when I got this tank I installed the hull reinforcement Mark I, and later on I unlocked the Mark II, but I haven't been playing this tank that much. As for the commander, I'm using Viktor Kirzanov, which gives me pretty much all the benefits that I want out of a tank. I get a reload time reduction for 10% after I bounce a shot, which is pretty likely in the M60, and this reload time bonus will make you do more damage over time. Cannon and turret ring hit points are increased by 25%, which is something that is useful when you're doing a PvE mission, because currently the bots seem to be prioritizing turret rings, because for some magical reason they can always find that thing, and it is of course the weakest part of an armor. So having this additional bit of hit points will make it less easy for you to get knocked out in a PvE match. Other than that, I do more damage to enemy vehicles after getting an overmatch. So if I do penetrate a target with an AP round and I do an overmatch, which means I don't do as much damage, because the round's going in one side and out the other, I get a little bit of extra module damage for the next vehicle, or for the next 15 seconds. So that's pretty much 2 rounds. For the crew, I'm going with stuff that will maximize my fire on the move capability. So I got smooth ride, I have minimum accuracy reduced by 20%, as well as having reload time improved. Now, I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of the tank. Let's get into some gameplay. I'm going to equip these things first before I forget to do so. Even if I don't use them, they do provide passive bonuses. 10% repair speed, 15% crew resilience, and 10% fire protection. Although, again, I rarely use them. So let's pick a PvP match first and see if we can get a good match with hopefully mostly tier 3s, because this thing doesn't really do that good with tier 4. Gonna pause it here and get back into you when the match has loaded in. Alright, we're in, and the matchmaking wasn't that favorable this time around. I'm one of the 2 tier 3s on my team and the rest is tier 4. So that means that pretty much every single unit on the enemy team has a good chance of penetrating my armor. And with the swing fires on the enemy team, as well as the artillery and the jalos, the left flank is pretty much a no-go area. It's going to be locked down by ATGMs and tank destroyers. So instead I'm going to have to go to the other side and try to use my hull down positions there, while only exposing the turret to deal some damage to whatever was going to pop up there. Which is probably going to be a few of the starships and the T-64s. They're all really hard to penetrate, so I'm going to switch to AP right away, since that's the first target that I expect to see. And this is usually the way that I also look at any kind of tank as well as shells that I load. Because sometimes you know that the first thing you're going to encounter is a lightly armored vehicle, in which case a heat round works best. Now I'm not really planning on moving up too far. I've already been spotted. And hello Mr. T-64. Ramming damage, by the way, after patch 10.1 or 0.10, depending on how you want to call that, has been increased, and you've seen that I took 176 damage from ramming that guy. So you gotta be careful around your friendlies. It's no longer just 5 or 6 points of damage. This is actually quite significant. Now that pack is pushing up nicely. I'm gonna ask this T-64 to push up with me, and hopefully together we can start rolling up this flank. Unfortunately, the guy does not seem to want to come with me. Bounced around from the Leopard there.
Incoming Artie!
Artie's coming in, of course. Ricocheted off the Leopard. Interestingly, I have a Starship and a T-64 on the other flank. Not really where I'd expected them to be. But I don't mind, because it means that there is probably less opposition for me on this flank. Or at least less heavy. Put a round into the Leopard, overmatched, so time to switch to heat rounds to try and do more damage to this guy. He's gonna pop out, loaded, fired, 322, and I tracked him. Afterwards, the T-64 hit him really badly, and hopefully he's gonna be tracked, yep, long enough. There you go. So that's the first one down. Or at least the first of their team, because we already lost 3 tanks here. There's a Starship up there, switching back to AP. And I will need some support from that T-64. But for some reason the T-64 thinks that a Tier 3 is perfectly capable of leading a charge against a Tier 4 target. It's just something I don't really agree with, but what you gonna do? Now we cannot really afford to sit here for too long. Not only because that AMX is almost out of hit points, he's down to 470, but also because they seem to be pushing the left flank a bit. The Starship that I had spotted before in the middle has moved away, but there is still a swing fire and a couple of Jalos on the other flank. And here is a BMD that's coming up.
Incoming!
Here comes the Artie. Yep, that was the Gvostica. HE frag round into my flank. Didn't really do that much damage though. 116 only. Ramming my friendly was actually a lot more damaging. Now you can see that this tank really struggles to get up a hill. It is moving at 3 kph, and once it reaches the top I cannot even go fast enough to actually get up there. So let's try and get this BMD. He bounced. I didn't. Overmatched. Should switch to heat for this target. The Artie target went down. Loaded in. There's a T-64. Might be able to pen his sides. And of course we're getting Artie dead. That's the other Gvostica. I'm really out in the open, so I'm an easy target for him. T-64, side shot, got him. I'm gonna stick to AP. Or actually I can switch back to heat, because the targets that are out here currently are all really easy to penetrate.
Incoming!
More Artie coming in, another good hit there from the artillery player. Right now there's just one swing fire alive and the Artie. But I doubt that with my speed I'm gonna get there in time to actually do damage to this guy. Our AMX is much more likely to kill him off. There's the Artie, of course, behind an incline. And that's the last player alive now. But the BMP is going to get there way earlier than I will. .6% or 6 hit points left. And victory. But he did manage to put one last round into the BMP 1P there. So, not totally useless once you're a tier 3 in a tier 4 game. If this happens to you, and it probably will at some stage, don't just give up and say, well, what the fuck am I doing here? You can actually do quite a bit of damage. I did pretty much the same amount of damage as my own hit points. So with that, I contributed to the team. Alright, results 2200 experience, 53,000 credits, and yes, that is with premium, but without my standard premium commander, which gives me 10% bonus. You can see that I got 999 damage done, and I also assisted in 918 damage. Now if you break that down, spotting damage barely got me anything, but immobilization got me quite a bit of damage, because that made me, or that tracking shot that I delivered to the Leopard 1, allowed my teammates to do 918 damage to this guy. And that actually got me quite a bit of XP, 66 points as well as 91 points for damage. So if you cannot penetrate a target or if you get an unlucky angle at it, just try tracking it because it will give you quite a bit of experience. I spotted some enemies as mentioned, I destroyed some enemy modules, I wounded a crew member, not really anything interesting going on there. But a net profit of 50,000 credits at tier 3 is pretty neat. Alright, I'm going to switch to a PvE mission. We're going to do a medium. I can only do hard once you get tier 5. That used to be tier 4, but they upped it to tier 5. So medium it is. I'm going to wait for the PvE match to load and then show you how well the heat rounds can perform out there. Alright, PvE loaded in. Operation Onyx, stop the train heist. I'm sure you've seen this one before. I got to defend 3 separate sections of the train as well as destroying some SATCOM trucks. My allies consist of 3 tanks as well as 1 recon vehicle or armored fighting vehicle. So we should have a bit of spotting capability going on, but in this map you don't really need a spotter. MBTs can handle the job just fine. Now you may be thinking, yeah, well PvE is not that interesting. I disagree with you. Because PvE can give you more XP than just a PvP match, as well as allowing you to blow off some steam after losing repeatedly in PvP matches. I'm going to try and focus mainly on heat rounds, because the heat rounds will do a lot more damage than the than the AP rounds. First SATCOM truck was already destroyed, probably by that Leopard 1 up there. You can see that the tank is just not very fast. Even at straight stretches, this thing struggles to get up to 40 kph. What you do get in that for return is an impressive heat round, which has an 8-second reload, or 7.44 in this case, as well as getting quite a bit of armor. I'm going to try and find that Scorpion. T92 here on the other side of the tracks. There's the Scorpion. And he seems to be going over. You can see autocannon fire going into that thing and tearing it apart. Now usually there will spawn a 1 or 2 vehicles over at this position, which makes it really easy to predict where they're going to be. And they will supposedly change that, but that's going to be quite distant, I think. Changing the spawn to dynamic instead of set. Now, I did get a bit of damage there, 197 from the AMX-10P, but I put 250 damage into him. Now it's going to be a bit of a cat and mouse game. Didn't get him. I fired too soon. And you can see that the 3-second reload does definitely impact how you can do your damage. Now I want to do the damage, but I don't really have to. And let's see. There you go. If you don't have to take a shot, if someone else can get into a better position to do damage, I usually just let them do the damage. because it's easier to sacrifice their, or to have them be in a better position than sacrifice my own hit points. Now with the train in the way, it's getting usually difficult to get shots here. You gotta either be on one side or the other side because it's really difficult to shoot through the train. You can see I'm not really changing course, but I'm still only doing 38 kph. This tank is not fast. If you're looking for a speedster, go with a Leopard tank. Those things are significantly faster than the M60. And we have to start thinking about getting those SATCOM trucks. We only got 2.5 minutes to do it. There's another one. And our T-62 just decided that was not an important target to shoot at. Getting these secondary objectives done gives you a bit of XP bonus. I'm not sure exactly how much, but I believe it does tell you in the results screen. Quite a bit of fire going up here. Looks like a mortar shell. I'm going to continue to push up to get those SATCOM trucks because I want that extra XP. Not that I need it because I have the thing unlocked, but it's nice to get it. Let's see, I did 1200 damage, and you can see that the Leopard, pretty much everyone did more damage than I did. And I mostly blame that on the low speed of the tank, because I simply cannot get into position fast enough to do the damage that I need to do. Jiggling the tank a little bit, but the Abbot seems to be either distracted or going for something else. There's the last SATCOM truck. Shell out, check, truck destroyed. Now let's defend the cap circle. Abbot spawned a bit unfortunate there up on the ridge. But there should still be an AMX-10 up here. Seems to be a bit of a mini-boss, but by the time I swing my turret around, and that's something that I haven't really discussed yet, but the turret traverse is not very good. It takes quite a long while for this turret to actually turn around. No penetration on the heat round. Scorpion up there, firing, 264. He did a tiny bit of damage, 36 to the front. Not really worried about Scorpions. What I'm worried about is tank destroyers spawning at the rear of this tank. Especially if they start showing up in larger numbers. That thing pretty much hurt my tank. 183. We should be getting close to actually completing the mission. Here's another one. If you want to get your gun on target faster, you're going to have to turn the entire tank. So what you see me do is try and get the tank or the gun on target as soon as possible by just turning not only the turret but also the entire chassis. Which is always good practice as it turns your strongest armor towards the enemy target. As far as damage goes, you can see the damage output of that Leopard 1 is way higher than mine.
You bought us enough time to clear the tunnels and tracks. Thank you for stopping the cartel here.
So, only 1000 XP for that one, and I scored the 4th position on that team. After, look at that, the Leopard doing 4900 damage. Really good DPS on that one. T62 probably spotted quite some targets, and you can see he got most targets from spots. And as far as my own stats go, I got a bit of, I think, missions done. No, I don't believe it really says that. But you still can get 1000 XP from a mission like this, which is sometimes better than what you're getting in PvP. So overall, I think this is an okay tank. I'm going to sell it right after I finish this review because I won't be playing it again. I don't think it's that much fun to keep. I'm much more of a fast tank guy, and this thing just doesn't cut it for me. But it is something that you're going to have to go through if you want to get down to the M1A1 line and going all the way, say, to the M1A1 itself, M1A2, or any of the future versions that they're going to bring into the game. Is it a fast tank? No. Is it a tank with a fast hull traverse? Not really. Gun traverse? Not really. It is pretty well armored. It is pretty punchy. It has a pretty good gun. But other than that, it's not that special. So I would recommend just grinding this thing out quickly, selling it, and moving on to the Starship. So I hope that with this review you got a bit of an idea of how you can play this unit. I'm not saying my way of playing it or equipping it is the best, it's just the way that I use it. So make sure that your tank always fits your needs, and I look forward to seeing what kind of retrofits or commander skills you have picked for your own tank, for your own M60 that is, and whether you like this tank or hate it. So let me know about that in the comments. If you liked it, please hit like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, because I try to get a review up every few days. And of course that's going to be progressively harder as I go up the tech tree, but we'll see about that. Anyway, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.